So I think we are live, yes. So before we go into like our API and stuff, I just want to show you something very simple I was working on today. So let's fire up the REPL and hopefully there should not be any error, and there are error, we have to kind of fix that. So end of file, it basically means that we have a unclosing parenthesis code. So we forgot to close something, right? Seems to be okay if you ask me. Let's land.repl, or maybe we can simply look it in here. End of file while reading started at 1. Okay, gen class should be inside there. Now it's more like it. Land.repl. So what I want to show you today, so I was working on this scrapper. So let's go to benchmark game. Okay, so the old URL does not work. Right, so they all have like list of programming languages that where we can measure the performance and size of the code and memory usage. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to compare like different languages and add like more options, but they simply don't allow it. How the heck it only use 8 memory? Okay, so never mind. So I basically decided like scrap the whole thing and have it like my own custom tool where I can tinker around with everything and see like what are the actual numbers that I am looking for. Like I want to have few things in my mind, so I will be like looking into that. So for now, like you can't compare Rust with any other language. So these are like go-to languages: C++, Go, Java, and I want to like see or compare different kind of languages. So now let's get to the code. So you might be thinking like, so we have this comment section, then we have all the like code, which is kind of super small, nothing much, like only 100 lines of code. And what is so cool about it, right? So from like 2 hours or 1 hour, I was talking to somebody else like about some project in Elixir. So and I don't know, I don't have any idea, and my REPL is like completely empty now. So what we're gonna do, I kind of run this command. Now I know all the dependencies are loaded in the REPL for this project, right? Now what I'm gonna fire all these like pre-devs for my REPL. So what they basically do, they simply have like let's say for let's see what they do. So first the response is basically a benchmark page, which is like home, and we kind of grab all the URLs from there, and yep, we simply visit all the programming languages and like visit all the pages. So I have the body response of that page stored in a response. Then we have like HTML, more like nlives HTML nodes that we can parse over, and we can like get information from that data. So we have like navigation data, which is this, and result page. And result page is like the page we get from the result page will be something like this page where the result of benchmark is showing. So we have like result page, and that we get from pages. And have we defined pages? Navigation data grab first pages. Do we have pages defined? Let's check it out. So it's gonna send a request. We get navigation data and result pages. I'm pretty sure we don't have. So from navigation data we're going to get the first page, then we're gonna request, like, right? So okay, so we do have pages, and I assume, where do we get that from? Okay, I see, daft pages. So this is the, I think this is the data we are talking about. So I kind of like, let's fire the whole thing up, right? So in here now I have like all the data that my program is gonna use, and I have full control over it. For example, so I wanna like have this algorithm information about the algorithm, like what kind of algorithm we are using, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna simply, let's just simply look at like what is inside the algorithm, and we get the whole data, right? And I already know the whole information about this program without even like executing it. I mean, you kind of executed it, but the way you develop in repl, you simply like define the blocks. I'm not sure like this is the way to go, but like I have seen some people like have a do block where you define all the required values and define the data that you're going to pass into the functions. Now every time I want to debug, I will simply execute the whole code and see if that algo block is like work properly with that get algorithm function. And so basically get algorithms takes this block and it kind of like prints out this algorithm thing, like so any algorithm that's here defined, it will print out in text form. So this is kind of cool, right? So now let's say they change the site, which is kind of common, and then again I will simply execute the entire thing and see what's not working. Like I would say like maybe this function is not working because I'm not getting the desired input. I don't have to like run the whole process, and I can like simply play around in repl and have all the things I want. I think after using Clojure, I haven't ran like I used to do like in Go or PHP. You used to like have where you run your program, then have it execute the whole thing. At when you reach that function that you want to see the data for, right? So the function you want to test, it's somewhere in between, like middle of your services. So let's close that. So I think doing that way, it's kind of like super, you have a lot of freedom, right? I would definitely recommend now, but before, like when I used to not use Clojure, I was super like I was not sure if I'm gonna use that, and I'm like yeah, Clojure might be fun, but I'm probably not gonna use repl, because like all my life I've been using this method of where you just execute your program and see what's up. And like you might be doing one request, let's say in this special scenario we are requesting a resource, and with the repl you kind of just cache the resource, and you don't do anything else, and just play around with all your data and the function you're gonna do on the data, and that's basically programming, right? So overall I would say it's kind of fun. And one more thing, since I'm just getting started, like it's been like 1 month since I'm using Clojure, I would say. And before that I kind of like tried Clojure, but most of the programs that I built with Clojure, like once I remember like I was parsing like 10 million rows in CSV, and I had like thousands of CSV. Probably this is not the right way to use Clojure for like parsing like lot of heavy data. You can do that, but your program gonna take a lot of memory. So that program didn't work out well because I was not sure what I'm getting into. And also I had like a lot of explode splits, and I would call simply-split on the list. And I was also, it's once you getting started with Clojure, it's kind of hard to see how everything's gonna play out. But overall I think the experience of using Clojure is kind of super cool as of now. And I'm not sure how long it will least like right. So it's like always Node is fun, yeah, PHP is fun, Python is super fun, Ruby is fun, Golang is fun, Rust is fun. But like once you get into that, it's everything is fun in start. And I think I hope that's not the case with Clojure. But I think I already noticed, like I prefer now reading. I think Clojure is more readable for me as of now. Maybe I think it's because I'm using it a lot, but I don't know. We will see. I think overall learning Clojure is like, it's something else. Yeah, it was super fun, right? So I will just wrap this up, and we will probably work on our API where we left off. So let's close it, right? So one more thing I noticed, that as of now the Clojure code I'm writing, it's kind of like super bad, right? So I mean, we can improve that, right? But it's more like once you sort out everything. But well, you can only improve your program, or maybe like move the functions in the right place in case of Clojure, or maybe fix the namings, or maybe fix any formatting, or maybe create an efficient version of the same function. So org, like using a better algorithm, right? So it's I think overall Clojure code is not that hard to change. Let's compare to like Rust. So let's go to not YouTube, but GitHub, right? Okay, so I had this program called SQL dump splitter in Rust, right? So when I was like, I will go over what it does. It's basically split the large like SQL file into small pieces, and you can specify the output size. For example, on some hosting the size is very limited, right? So you can only like, if you are working with shared hosting, you know what I'm talking about. So you simply use that, and split the file into small pieces. And let's say you have like 1 GB file, and you only want to upload like 500 MB or something like that. If you're going to upload it from localhost, you simply can't upload the whole file if you don't have access to the admin panel, or maybe root access. You don't have the root access, so you might want to use a small program where you just split the file. So let's go over the code, right? I will make sure that we don't talk about Rust that much, right? So the issue I had with that, the first of all, I would say I kind of had like fun using Rust, but it's not that fun of a language, if you ask me. Like, first I was really excited about it. I do think if you're a C or C++ programmer, you probably want to switch to something like Rust. I think Rust is like for me, Rust is if you want performance and you don't want, basically can't use C and C++, and I don't have like decades of experience in those languages, so I'm gonna have like seg faults and memory leaks in C and C++. So this is where Rust shines for a programmer who only worked on let's say programming languages that have GC based languages. But if you want to go away from GC, so this is where the Rust shines. It has like it makes sure you simply don't have memory leaks and null pointer exceptions, although you can still close them, but that's on purpose probably. So so I had this program, right? So I finished this program like in week or two, but now like once it's finished, now I want to like make improvements, like change the data structures. I want to try different things. Can I do that? Now I notice this is where you don't have freedom when you talk about statically typed languages, right? Especially in Rust, where you also have to like manage what would you say, like memory manually, yeah, like the borrow checker and everything. With Rust, it's gonna like be super painful, and if you want the performance, you have to do that, right? And so splitter tokenizer, so I basically wanted to get rid of enums, maybe have like a better structure. So overall I wanted to make it super fast, and then again I also wanted to make it so that I write files super fast asynchronously. So what I noticed that making changes into existing code, it makes super hard. Maybe I think it's because of my background. I mostly worked on dynamically typed languages full time, right? And but I don't see that issue with the Go. I would say Go does not force type to your face, and like Rust does, and everything has to have a type. What I mean by is custom defined, not the built-in like strings and whatnot. So let's say in Rust you have like if you go to Rust doc OS strings, right? The OS string part have a custom type, right? So it has a custom type instead of just returning a string, and the Go's approach is simply to just return a string value with the string type of string. Now the issue with that is you have to like change. So now let's say you have this like OS string type. Now if you want to make some changes to the existing file, let's say this file does something that uses those file types. Now first of all, if I want to make I want to try this new different kind of thing, first I have to change all the names, then I have to make sure all the methods are viable and works on those functions, and third thing, I have to check whether the decision I took was right or not. I mean, this is the price you're gonna pay with the fully statically typed languages. And this is the same issue I face with Haskell, right? So figuring out all the data structures that you need upfront is super painful in Haskell. Because I kind of have less experience in Haskell, and I was building a parser in it, and it kind of gets super hard to what kind of data types you gonna use, right? Are you going to use string, multiple list of strings, and are you going to have strings with the offsets or maybe some metadata? So in something like Clojure, you simply just I would say in dynamic languages, you simply just add more data to the array, or I mean map, whatever. You get the point, right? So I think this approach we have seen in if there was a Facebook project, right? Facebook and Clojure. So there was a Facebook project which kind of used GitHub. Let's go to Hacker News. So there was a Facebook project, and they used Clojure. Then after you building everything in Clojure, they kind of moved to Haskell. And I was thinking if they started with Haskell, how hard it will be. Maybe anyone who is using Haskell on regular basis, they also gonna have the issues the static versus dynamic issues, right? So Facebook had let's call by date, Kafka streams, Node UI, show and clone. So Clojure was a blue lamp and all that. So I don't remember the project name, right? So now they simply the thought. So the Facebook team the project they were building. So they simply decided to use Haskell, and I think the reason was their team grew and they wanted to use types for validation, right? And yep, so Facebook with duckling, yep, that's the project I'm talking about. So the old implementation is done in Clojure, and the new implementation they kind of using Haskell. And I think in one of their comments they were talked about the reason for using Haskell was simply the development team was growing, maybe probably, and they wanted to use statically typed language for this project. Now the issue is if I were to choose a language to start a project where you don't have the knowledge about the data structure that you're gonna be you will have at the end of once the program is finished. I mean, it's kind of super hard. I'm not sure if you have used any statically typed language heavily, but I kind of have projects in Golang, Rust, and yeah, I have written 5 to 10,000. I don't know, it's 10, but more than 5,000 line of Rust code now. and figuring out types we're gonna use is kind of like hard at start, right? And I don't see that issue in any dynamic language. You simply just build your entire program. Like once that program is done, now you know all the types that you want to use, all the interactions, all the types that have. Now once you figured all the types you like, right? So you once you know all the data types your program gonna data structures your program gonna use. Now the issue, so do you then like decide to move something to statically type? I would probably not do that. I think for some programs it might be a viable option to like play around in Clojure, maybe for performance, for real performance, like. But then again, converting like all those data structure to a different language, yeah, but we can, yeah, I think that's viable, right? But then again, if you have like existing project that's changes, that is living project and changing each day, right? Like there is more code coming in, right? So there is no right and wrong answer to static and dynamic languages. I think they both serve a purpose, and some people prefer dynamic languages, some people prefer statically typed languages, right? So we will not get into that, but I'm just sharing my experience. So right, so I would say, like, if I ever to build something like that, and I pretty sure, like, I have no clue what that thing does, and I haven't looked into it, so I would probably avoid Haskell at any cost in starting phase. I would probably use something dynamic, especially if you can. You wanna use Clojure, that's super good, and overall I'm super happy with that language. And I think Clojure brings a lot of new things, or maybe old things in a new way if you know, like from Lisp, right? So yep. So overall, I would say if I am going to build a program there where I don't have the information about the data structures, I would probably use Clojure. And then again, if I have lot of a program where I'm just simply where I simply have to deal with lot of different type of data, and I would still prefer Clojure. And yes, I think Clojure, so programming is basically like using data and functions on operations on that data. So that is like programming in a nutshell. So I mean, if you have this thing where you just have the data and set of functions, yep. So probably I would, for starting anything where I don't have any information, I would probably simply use a dynamic language as of now, right? Let's close that. Okay, close splitter. This program, I'm super afraid to like change. I think once I decided to change all the types, but it's kind of like super, it's like a lot of work, and it also like catches all these errors. But then again, like, we simply have the, like, all the state defined in like there. What is the like meaning for errors? Yeah, you might miss a case, right? That's also like yeah, you kind of like forget to check whether this value is right. So it's like logical errors, right, where you don't just check for a certain case. So like as Richiki said, like you simply check like you check the type of this thing. Like let's say you get string, but this string contains an email, right? So your program does not have any information about the string, right? So in case, do you have a data type for custom email, right? Then again, you decided like, no, we're not gonna use email, maybe with something, we're gonna use something else, right? So yep, so it's like the paper, there is no silver bullet to do software development, right? But the static type makes it super hard to modify existing programs, and yep, they prevent few errors, like yeah, then again, why there are testing, you test your code, like there is testing for that, right? If you are really, and I think Clojure spec is kind of cool. Yes, so yeah, I find it super hard to like modify the existing program. Like if there is some modification, that's fine, but like rewriting it, yeah, or maybe like rewriting one component, or like everything is so tangled together, maybe it's like super bad code, could be that. But how would you do it other way, right? So let's stop our rants about programming languages. And I do like Rust. I think it's like super cool language. It's a like super niche. You only need it when you need it, right? When you don't want to have GC in your code, you might want to try Rust, right? And there's Go. Go is cool too. Then OCaml is fun, right? So this was this is the language that made me understand Haskell, and without that I would probably not understand Haskell, because in Haskell they don't really have much syntax for functions and for lets, right? So let's close that. So we were working on sync method, if I remember correctly. And create. Okay. So okay, so let's get into that. Now we had merge. What is row, right? Row is okay, so the table name synchronization, so the node ID and tag ID is the row, right? And we can also like, can we do something like comment and have like def row? And I'm pretty sure it's like super bad idea, right? Having this thing in your comment section. Let's say I do that, and then I have like rows, and I can have like specify a row could be this, or maybe some comment over there. I mean, so I was thinking about a language, right, where I could simply, so back when I was like working on a backend REST API, and we used to have like, I had to like debug it a lot. And what I mean by debug, like I wanted to like, for certain values I want to know what kind of value it can be, so right. And I was thinking like, if there was a language where I could just simply, without running the entire thing, I could, for let's say this accepts a row, and without executing anything, if I just tab some, like do some sort of thing and know what's the value it's gonna take and stuff like that. It will be like super cool. I think this is the issue you face with the dynamic languages, where you don't have much information about the type, and unless you have like spec, right? So you spec, you define the rules for the values, and which is like more powerful than any statically typed language, right? So you define a rule for email, and it will simply check against that email, right? And in in statically type language, you simply have this thing where you simply specify the data type as a string, but with spec you can be more specific, and you can tell it's gonna be email, and when we say email, we might have a custom rule for that. Like, let's say we don't allow certain things inside that email, so you can have a rule for that. Not only that, then you also can generate the data for the exact email type you accept in function. I mean, it's like kind of cool, if you know. Plus you are going to probably write I don't know. So it kind of makes generative testing super easy, and you never really miss any case. But I haven't tried it, so I would probably not advocate it. But it kind of sounds cool, like this comment thing, right? So once I get things into production, only then you can. But I would say learning Clojure, it's like learning a lot of things, like different way of thinking, where you simply don't have classes, you play around with data, you pass data back and forth, you build new structure from that data. So it's all about data, it's nothing else, and the code itself is data. And what else you want? I think this is also an issue. Like, once you are in that mindset, you kind of like, yeah, I'm coding Clojure, it's kind of super cool, right? And maybe that's just my mindset right now, I think, right? Because I'm using Clojure kind of like too much. So table. So I was like, for today I was doing some Elixir. I simply just didn't have like the drive to code Elixir, right? I think it will probably take some time for me to move to a different language. So it's gonna be table name head is equal notes and tags. We get the nodes, right? So simply now we have like all the data we need for our repl. So let's fire up the repl, and I'm sure we will have some errors. Let's fix those. Find is warning, right? So could not locate response, because we kind of like don't have response anymore. I renamed it to HTTP response. Okay, so I think HTTP, and we are doing well. So yep, I think it should fix our issues. Okay, we also have few more errors. module notes find unable to resolve in this context, and notes.create create. Okay, so hash symbol line number 82. Okay, cannot find the percentage in this context. Okay, makes sense. So let's get rid of that and simply return a null. Right, so let's exit and run the repl. So one more issue like I have faced, and I would not say issue, but a friend of mine like asked about the license for Clojure. Like he's not sure whether the Oracle gonna use, like whether they can use Java on the Oracle's JDK. So I think if you are thinking about like if you also have that same issue about Oracle, I would say you can use OpenJDK, and it's in OpenBSD license, right? It uses a BSD license. You can look into the license. Also, it's backed by different companies, so it's gonna be like open source for some time. I mean, mostly it's gonna be open source and free to use. And there's also like Amazon's version of that. You can also use that. So it has like a lot of support behind it. So OpenJDK is not going anywhere. You can always rely on OpenJDK. And there is also a website like adopt OpenJDK, and if they could also like have a list of companies that already switched to OpenJDK, that would be like super cool. But yep, there is a side. So if you have like issues whether you want to use JVM in your production, you can simply use OpenJDK, right? And it's backed by Red Hat, Amazon, like different kind of companies, right? It's also like Oracle also had like also like pushing also manage OpenJDK, right? So it's not like it's only backed by all these companies. And any Java developer probably know more about OpenJDK or ecosystem around JVM like Java, and I'm just like getting into it. I haven't used JVM. I used to like super hate Java, and I still have no plans to use Java, to be honest. So could define sync. So tables, rows. Now we have the data. Now what we're gonna do, we can sync it, right? So let's see what we get. Now we kind of like worked on this yesterday. No, I don't remember like what kind of output I'm gonna get. But with that we can simply copy the function and simply call, right? Then again we can also have, so in this case we already have this import. That is super cool, man. I'm super good. So we already have this import section. That is cool. So if you see yourself using like lot of imports, what you can do is create a new file, maybe in project or maybe, so you can have like repl.env file, I don't know, so where you can simply predefine all the data that your program is using, right? So you import all the namespace and all the data, and you can like run a mini environment, experimental environment, and see what's going in your environment, right? That's gonna be super cool. I think if you're like, when we are programming any other language, I don't remember, like we never really touch repl, but once you enclosure you simply don't get out of your repl thingy. So we also define tags, right? So we can, instead of table, we can get rid of that. We can have it in here, right? So let's go to sync. What it does. So we already have defined sync. So it takes a table and okay, so I think we already have predefined sync, table and rows. And let's send table and rows. So we get a where query from, and right, so where item is equal to this. Now let's go to honey SQL. We might want to get count. Okay, so select count, right? So okay, so if you think about like on Emacs, you simply select the code and execute it. I think for Emacs users it's gonna be like super fun, but I don't like learning things unless they are really important. Like I already have like a lot of things in my to-do list. I don't want to add a text editor into that, but I think if you are doing Clojure for a long time, you might want to look into it. So select count, can we run db query? So hopefully node does not exist, and we're still getting the same error, right? So let's format this query, SQL format. Okay, we are not ID. Now there is some issue in the queries we're generating, right? Okay, so the operator should be inside this node instead of the whole thing, right? I mean, you can already see like I'm just simply like extracting all the information. Let's say if you are doing the same thing wrong in Laravel and you are sending it a wrong operator in their ORM, it's like super hard to debug. They will simply throw an SQL error, but if you want to debug, like just want to see what kind of data you're passing, and it kind of like require a lot of time, but in here we simply have like all the information in front of us. Maybe I'm just like forcing Clojure. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I don't know. I find it that's the case with Clojure. I could be wrong. Like it could be like any relationship. From in first, it's like super awesome, but then it gets tricky, right? So like we get this function out and we kind of run it, and we give it rows. Now, okay, map rows. Should be rows, right? Should be rows. It could be one row or many rows. Probably rows. So where we are doing something, so cons on right. So let's print the data. Call println, println, and I see. Okay, instead so we don't simply want to like call we simply, once we do that, we also want to iterate and cons and pre-append this operator into the node itself. Okay, so not in the parent node but probably in the node itself. And do we use one more map? So we have vec and list of vec. Let's see if we can pull it off with the apply cons Clojure doc apply. So we're gonna see its source code. So applies a function to the argument list, the pre-pending inversions intervening argument to the argument. Kind of super complex to understand. What do they mean? So function apply to seek list, Clojure lang ifn apply to list. So I think apply to will be a internal function. I don't know, define, or is it something that is built into the language for the runtime, right? So apply string to this list. Okay, so apply takes a function, and that function could be this thing, right? And send them rows. Okay, instead of rows, can we do first wrong number of arguments? 2. Okay, only 2 arguments, but apply string to strings, str to strings, right? So what else they want? So I have first, and how I'm going to, if we call first on that, right, we get a vector back. So apply first. Okay, so what I have to do, is there any other use case max, which is the same as max? Okay, apply and on list cannot take values of macro, make fn apply max on. Okay, so we have rows, right? Map over rows, and let's say we can apply count. Let's say not max, right? So count, I'm not sure why it's not, I'm pretty sure it's not gonna work. Okay, throw arity, so wrong number of argument passed to the Clojure count. Okay, So apply max works, right? Let's do it simple way. So we have this, and we get in a map, right? So we also might wanna do something like let's get the first item first, and call map on that, then println. We get all the values. Now what we're gonna do, we can say cons on the existing values and map v. Okay, so vector. Okay, I think that's what we are looking for. Okay, so we will have an and. So that means we will be calling a nested function inside here, which will be map. Let's call it a map, right? So this will work on that, and we don't want to do that. Okay, this one is closed. Now it's super confusing, so we're not gonna do that. We're going to pull this thing out, right? And what you can do, pre-append condition, and we can specify that callback in here, right? So we can specify it in here, and let's close that. Now what it takes, it's gonna take a row. Okay, first argument inside. Now I think nesting all this shorthand for function definition is gonna be super confusing, so we're gonna call fn with argument, right? And we can have like map which iterates over them. Then we can simply close the function, and the function gonna take a m, which is represent map, right? So now we have this map, and the function gonna close in here, and let's define def prepend precondition, and and we can use this condition in here, right? So let's get rid of and we can specify that %, right? And let's call this on keyword. So we are doing something wrong. Yes, We should not be calling this, instead we should be just calling that. So that's exactly what we need. And we can, if we are really serious, we can convert it into map v, and map v will simply return it will simply return a vector def precondition and close this, right? Map precondition on rows, kind of cool. Okay, so now get rid of that. Let's evaluate it. Now go back, right? So okay, so where we were, sync table rows and db SQL format. Okay, so there is an error probably. Where name is equal to this. Interesting. So let's say h where x is equal to 1. Okay, multiple wheres. Okay. X equal to this, y is equal to 2. So okay, now let's look at that format we are getting. Let's not print, we will just simply print the data. Okay, so we have it in nested map, but instead it's gonna be the part of the where, right? So this should be in the same raw, like in the same vector instead of nested vector. So what we are doing wrong? Apply HVRM. Is anyone watching? Probably not. I think we are watching ourselves. So apply h merge where rows. Okay, apply rows, or apply this on rows. Let's do this. Not really this. Okay, we get super nested values, and once we get these, we simply apply. Okay, so can we use flatten? Probably not. No, we can't do that. So okay, so what we are doing wrong, so there is something wrong. It should not be that nested. See, everything is super nested, right? So let's go back right. Precondition, if we can like map over all these values, and so we have this data, and to have it in right order, let's apply merge where and pass all that data, and what we need is these items to be, do we want them to be that way? Yeah, probably. Yeah, we want them to be that way instead of right. So I think we will remove apply and have a customer sock for rows, and before going anywhere else, let's predefine this in case. Def right condition, and we have map, right? So we kind of get a nested map back. Let's look at the rows, and rows, they are not that nested if you ask me, and so why we get a extra, maybe we are calling an extra, something extra, map v on vac, which will return cones. Do we really need vector for that? I'm not sure. So def okay, so it's inside a vector, which kind of makes sense. Then we get this value and those rows, and we're gonna iterate over them. Okay, oh, I see, now I see. So what we are doing, we basically passing the entire thing. Let me explain. Def right, so one more time, get rows. Now once we do that, right, and we get the rows back. Now in where we are simply like we have like this nested data, and that does not, I think it shouldn't be that way. Or is it? Like, let's call this where with nested data, and nope, that's not the right way to do that. Merge where, or we can say where. Okay, so can we do something like merge where, and then pipe that value into h merge where, and that will be our tag ID. So yeah, something like this makes sense, and passing a nested structure to merge where doesn't really make sense. Okay, so I think I should be like looking into like more advanced stuff in Clojure, where you simply like call the function on list and pack everything into it. So for now, what are the options for us? I think what we can do, my brain kind of, if you think about it, like after all that time, my brain always work in loop. I am always solving something, or like this problem with the loop, we're going to like loop over it. Let's see if there is any other way, right? So we have this merge where not, and the number can be like, could be anything. So what if we call map on rows? Simply on this thing we call map. Before we do that, we need to see what we get back, right? So we call println now. We probably want to call map on that instead of, right? Interesting. So we have this nested structure, and what we want is like call this function merge to only that block and then pipe into next block, right? And we can do that by, let's say, define a function, right? Define merge where, okay, we can override it for some reason. And what we get, we're gonna get something like this, and we have, let's specify it in here. And what next? Okay, so if we, I think I will probably loop over it, right? Yeah, I think as of now I will probably use loop, but let's say we have this value, then can we use map over this thing and have it in h.where. Yeah, I think this will work fine. Yeah, this will work fine. Then we simply return the first element, right? So, and we do this, and we simply gonna return the first element first, right? So let's try to run that. Okay, so we get multiple wheres now, where not id. Okay, so something is wrong, right? We shouldn't be calling first. I think we should just use loop and it will be like super easy problem to solve. Yep, I think loop kind of makes sense, but yep, think it will kind of like make sense to use loop. So merge where loop over use loop, and what we're gonna get inside the input. So it's a nested kind of thing, nested where. So we call it vac of conditions, and vac of cons gonna be the same. Then we have a return value, and that return value going to be, yes, it's gonna be a where statement, which is map, right? So right now the next step gonna be, if first so the next step, I think it's gonna be let, right? So we define a let condition cnd grab first from vac cons, let's say conditions cons first, from first condition we get the condition, and next step would be to check if this value is, if the condition is empty, null, right? Then what we're gonna do, we simply gonna return the return, right? That, else we're gonna do something crazy, else we're going to push the data into return value, and let's call it a vector, right? So, or vector empty map, I don't know, man. I think for now maybe we can call nil, right? Nil. So yeah, I think I will figure something out. Kind of like, I think I used all my energy today, so yeah, I'm super sleepy now, probably. So I think if we can fix this thing as of now, let's try that. I will give it a shot. Recursive recur, and we're gonna send the rest of the conditions cons, and now we have the ret, and let's say we get this condition, get return nil first rest condition rest. Now we get the condition in the first value, and so we have this thing right there. Now let's call h dot where, and we're gonna simply pipe into something. Nope, we're not gonna pipe as of now. So we can say cond, right, cnd. So we pass it a condition. Now it will return merge where. So we pass it a condition, right? But before we do that, let's create an empty return and pipe inside like that. So it's always creating a new value, right? Okay, why? Okay, we kind of like remove this section and close everything, and so we get all the rest of the conditions, and we kind of pipe, and then it will pass. I think it should work just fine, although it's kind of super ugly, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna simply call merge where. So yep, that's exactly what we wanted, and we got the exact thing we wanted. Now, is it kind of ugly? It's, yep. I will probably, I think as of now it will be like super helpful if we kind of like read someone else's code and try to see what they did and try to improve our code also. I think this will be our next step if we want like to learn Clojure in a better way. So I think I will be doing that also. And let's test this thing, and instead of apply we cannot say map of this merge where, and hopefully it works. If it's not gonna work, we will probably see why. We kind of used all the time to like explain the other things. Static versus dynamic var, sync, right? Okay, precondition, sync, table and rows, right? It's kind of simple table. Okay, so the where is screwed up. I think it should not be that way. Clojure, preprint, right? So where is super nested? Yep, it is kind of. I think the reason is like we are calling it on map, right? So, oh yeah, we are doing something wrong here. So we have all those rows, and for each row we want to do something like that, right? We don't want to pass all these rows into that. What we might want to do, pass a value. So let's say let's see if we could do that in here. So we have this, right? Then we pull it out, then we define, we kind of like pass the percentage, that is cool. Then we do this, then we also pipe it to next value. Let's push it out, then we do this, right? So let's try that, but that will generate different kind of queries. So select now, that's we get dynamic queries, but yeah, it will work. I think the where kind of matches, but now the issue is, are we on a right path, right? So this is not the issue, like whether it's not gonna work, but we kind of like added more complexity to our application, and it's gonna bite in the end. So I think it would be much better if we could have some better approach to handle that, and rather than creating our own abstraction, probably I would not say use an existing abstraction, but we might wanna see if there's any other way to like do this exact same thing, but less complex. Now I am pretty sure like we kind of added more complexity into this section alone, right? So what also one thing I wanted to do with this project is like build all these services where the service, or the whole service, only gonna take 1 week to rewrite, so we don't like pull things from here and there. Yep, something like that, but we will see. So as of now, I'm pretty sure I kind of like I'm adding more complexity in our application. I don't know what I'm not sure if we are fixing anything or we are like introducing more issues to application, but we will never know unless we spend weeks debugging the stuff. So I think that's about it. We will see tomorrow.